Investment advisory services offered through SWAN-Capital Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. SWAN-Capital Management, LLC, and SWAN-Capital are independent entities.
What your money would say. Andrew McNair. Money Talks. Are you listening? Money Talks. Are you listening? Money Talks. Are you listening? What your money would say with Andrew McNair.
We're live here on What Your Money Would Say. I'm your host, Andrew McNair. And for the next 30 minutes, every Saturday from 12:30 to 1 o'clock, we'll be taking financial chickens and making them financial swans. But what does it mean to be a financial swan? Well, it means to sleep well at night. And as a retiree, I believe you deserve to sleep well at night. See, this passion of mine, why I started What Your Money Would Say in SWAN-Capital, originates when I was just 14. See, I was one of those blessed, weird people that knew what they wanted to do for the rest of their life at a young age. And when I started working at a financial firm at 14, I worked at a firm that dealt with many retirees. And it really, it burned and cursed. It was a curse on my soul when I saw so many families in 2008 just got wrecked by the Great Recession. See, they came into our office, they were investing with other financial advisors, and they were confused. They were distraught. See, they said, well, we played by all the rules. You know, we invested in our 401k. We dollar cost averaged. We put 3 kids through college. We tithed. We gave to charity. Why did we lose 30% of our portfolio? And when we looked at their statements, you know, back then I was just building their financial plans. They had all the right investments. They had great mutual funds. They had big companies and they had great track performances, but they still lost 30% of their portfolio. And they just couldn't understand. They were diversified. They played by all the rules. What I realized was even by playing by the rules, you can still get bullied out there in the stock market. And I realized, just like Warren Buffett once said, you find out who's skinny dipping when the tide goes out. And unfortunately, the 2008 was that big tide when it went back in. And now it's been a few years after 2008. And we see a lot of families are back to skinny dipping, back to taking more risks than they should. And that's where SWAN-Capital originated, was those conservative principles that remain steadfast in being conservative, that the tortoise did win. And a part of a good financial plan for a conservative investor is making sure that you have plenty of cash on hand. Now, I have seen so many retirees go overboard. They have way too much cash held in their portfolio. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk extensively about GBS accounts. GBS accounts to us are checking accounts, money markets, savings accounts, and CDs. So if you have those accounts, then you're in the right place. See, we call them GBS accounts, but it stands for Going Broke Safely. What we found is families have so much money stashed away in the bank, and we don't even like to call them that they're invested in those accounts. We call it having money on pause, because really, we're going to find out that, in my opinion, CDs are actually really risky. And we're going to talk about why that's the case. Because you don't want your money on pause anymore. And today, if you have your money invested in those areas, you're in the right place, because we're going to help you get off your assets. We're going to help you look at some cash alternatives to really maximize your rate of returns on those accounts and potentially protect these accounts from lawsuits and creditors. We're going to help you look at some more tax efficient strategies for you. So I shared with you why I created SWAN-Capital, and we talked a little bit about GBS accounts, but I want to talk about why CDs are potentially could be risky for you. See, most families are led to believe and are bamboozled to believe that CDs are risk-free. CDs are default risk-free. They're absolutely default risk-free, which means that if they default, someone will come and pay for those accounts. And who will pay for those is FDIC, basically the government. But you know what they're not risk-free of? Is purchasing power risk, which is other called inflation. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. When it comes to inflation, it's that silent tax that is constantly taking money out of our pockets. And we can't see the effect day in and day out, but we can see its effect over time. You know, it's kind of like glaciers. You know, they move so slow and you don't really notice what they're doing to the landscape, but they're constantly cutting through the landscape slowly but surely and steadfast. See, that's just like inflation. It's doing that to your portfolio. It's doing that to your GBS accounts. And so I want to, just really encourage you to implore you to stay tuned to today's show, because if you're just tuning in to What Your Money Would Say, what we found is families have so much money stashed away in cash and CDs and savings. And last time I always sit down with them, and last time I had an appointment discussing this, I asked the family, I said, when's the last time you had a $50,000 emergency? And guess what they said? Never. They'd never had a $50,000 emergency, yet they had $300,000 in CDs. Earning 5%. Oh, not 5%. I meant, 0.5%? So it was a pitiful rate of return. And I tried to help them realize that if inflation went up supposedly 1.5% and you're making 0.5%, you actually didn't make 0.5%. You lost 1%. And I'm going to give you the analogy multiple times through the day, but it's like going on a treadmill. And you feel like you're really getting something done and accomplished, but at the end of the day, you're not going anywhere. So we want to stop going at a glacial pace, and we want to stop getting our funds stopped and basically placed on pause. So let's talk about the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. That's how we track inflation. I like to use the retiree price index, the RPI, because as a retiree, CPI doesn't always apply to you. If you have a motorhome, if you golf a lot, if you're enjoying that 7-day weekend that we call retirement, your expenses are different than mine as a working class, because as a retiree, you're spending more money on leisure activities, healthcare expenses. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you go to the pump to fill up your RV, it's not going up that 3 to 4% that everyone's been telling you. It's going up 5, 7%. And so you're seeing that your fixed income is being eroded and that your rate of return on your CDs is a joke. And so what do? Well, I want to share with you an alternative to that silent tax. What happens if you could go with some good offense? I want to share with you a cash alternative where you can earn up to 2% guaranteed. That's right, 2% contractually guaranteed, double the 2-year CD rates right now. That you can earn a guaranteed 5% up front and opportunity to make up to 4%. So what does that look like? That means if you have over $150,000, because we do have an asset minimum at SWAN-Capital. Unfortunately, with these strategies, we can't work with everyone. So if you have over $150,000 and you just deposited that money, if you'd get 5% up front. So you would start off with basically $7,000 day one and earn a guaranteed 2% on that amount, with an opportunity to do up to 4%, which most of our families enjoyed last year. Sound too good to be true? I assure you it's not. It's a great cash alternative that at SWAN-Capital we specialize in. And if you want to find out more information and just basically want to get a second opinion on your cash alternatives, give us a call at 380-9558. That's 380-9558. In August, our VP of Operations would be happy to give you a call on Monday to schedule basically a 30-minute consultation. That we don't charge a fee on our 30-minute consultation, and we basically sit down and see if a cash alternative would be suitable for you. So you can call that at 380-9558. That's 380-9558. So we understand that CDs are not risk-free. They are default risk-free, but they're not purchasing power risk-free. So if you're just tuning into What Your Money Would Say, we're talking about GBS accounts, going broke safely accounts like checking accounts, CDs, money markets. And I want to talk about the CD treadmill. A lot of my clients are in their 70s and 80s. And the only thing that they get really excited about money these days, and it's really sad, they share with me, they say, Andrew, it's really pitiful. We basically wake up and we look in the newspapers to find the next best CD rate. Our CDs are evolving every 24 months, and we're just trying to squeeze out that extra percentage point. just another 0.1, 0.2 on our CD. And I say, guys, are you ready to get off your CD treadmill? Are you ready to stop running at this exhausting pace, looking for the next best CD, going from bank to bank, and just trying to find that best rate in this low interest rate environment? Well, there are alternatives where you can get that guaranteed 2%, and you can get the guaranteed 5% up front. It's not too good to be true, and I'm going to give you more information on it as we go through the show. But I do want to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to talk about liquidity, because CDs have been proposed to be liquid the whole time. We get all this propaganda, but are they really liquid? We'll be right back.
Today's financial landscape can be rough. One of the most important aspects of planning is choosing the right guide to help you navigate the road to retirement. Andrew McNair and the team at SWAN-Capital is dedicated to providing the very best service in the retirement planning industry today. SWAN-Capital is a full-service independent wealth management firm dedicated to providing guaranteed custom income plans that you cannot outlive. Contact Andrew McNair at SWAN-Capital 850-380-9558. That's 850-380-9558. The difference between SWAN-Capital and you retire once. We help people retire every day. You should be enjoying your retirement years, not letting worry keep you up at night. SWAN-Capital. Sleep well at night. Contact Andrew McNair at SWAN-Capital 850-380-9558. That's 850-380-9558. Again, that's 850-380-9558.
The Veteran Benefit Project, founded by Andrew McNair, president of SWAN-Capital, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping veterans and widows of veterans with long-term care expenses by qualifying for the VA's Aid and Attendance Benefit. Learn how to receive over $24,000 per year from the VA towards long-term health care. There is absolutely no fee associated with our assistance to the veteran, the widow of a veteran, their families, or any retirement community. Our goal is to preserve the dignity of the veteran and to reduce the dependency on the Medicaid system. Again, learn how to receive over $24,000 per year from the VA. Contact the Veteran Benefit Project 850-380-5137. That's 850-380-5137. 850-380-5137. Look us up on the web, myveteranbenefit.com. At the Veteran Benefit Project, we are committed to helping you secure the benefits you deserve.
Well, welcome back to What Your Money Would Say. I'm your host, Andrew McNair, and today we're talking about GBS accounts. So if you own a CD, checking accounts, money markets, or savings, you are an owner, a proud owner of GBS accounts. And we all are. We all own GBS accounts. But do we own too many GBS accounts? Because GBS stands for Going Broke Safely, and we don't want to have too much money in these accounts. You know, like I was sharing in the beginning of the story, is when I sit down with a client that has too much in checking accounts, money markets, and savings, I ask them, I say, when's the last time you had a $50,000 emergency? And of course they never have, but it's nice to have a great emergency fund. But if you have too much money into cash, you could actually be at risk, inflation risk, and we wouldn't want that to happen to you. I'm going to talk to you about the 3 investment worlds. Where does someone go for cash alternatives? Well, the first world is going to be what we call fixed investments. These are going to be like money markets, CDs, savings. These are going to be things like checking accounts, things that earn steady interest rates, and not any of them are guaranteed. They're all guaranteed to provide you those rates, but there's no opportunity for growth. And then we got one on the farthest right side. There's three investment worlds. So we got fixed, which is money markets, checking accounts, CDs, and savings. And then on the opposite spectrum, we have the market. These things, as we know, are like, stocks, dividend paying stocks, blue chip stocks that are safe, they say. But if you look at the Dow, not every stock that was there 100 years ago. Quite interesting, but they say it's safe. So we'll put them in there, though. We have blue chip stocks. We have bonds. We have things like REITs in there. So those are the markets. So we got fixed and we got markets. Then we got something in the middle, and that's a hybrid. These are things that we call linked accounts. Now, linked accounts are only good fits typically for cash alternatives for families that have over $150,000 to invest. And again, if you don't have over $150,000, some of these strategies won't make sense for your situation. But really, linked accounts is where SWAN-Capital specializes in. Let me give you a good example of a linked account. A linked account would be like a gold link CD. Basically, a gold link CD tracks then the gold rates. So if gold goes up, then you get some of the uptick. If gold goes down, then you're protected from some of the losses, but you're not going to gain anything either. So that's a good linked account example. See, what we have to be careful of is we don't want to go from fixed to market too quickly. And we're seeing a lot of that right now. I'm seeing a lot of families that say, Andrew, well, we can't make any interest rate in these CD markets. So what are they doing? They're going straight to the market, the opposite spectrum, and they're going to bonds because bonds have been positioned as the safe alternative to stocks. And they can because they go inversely together. However, just because they go inversely to stocks does not make bonds safe. And that's a lot of propaganda out there. Bonds, you can lose money. And then we're right now in a low interest rate environment. But I wanted to give you Bonds 101. If bonds have an inverse relationship to stocks and an inverse relationship to interest rates, and interest rates rise, what happens to bond prices? Bond prices drop, which means you either have to keep your bond to its maturity, which could be 20 years, 30 years, sometimes the length of my client's lifespan, and which is not plausible, or you have to sell at a loss. So you can lose money on your bonds. So if you're out there and you're slowly converting your money from CDs to bonds, I want to tell you to be careful because there are other alternatives that don't pose the risk that we specialize in as linked accounts. Also, you want to talk about liquidity, and that's where we left off before commercial break, is talking about the liquidity of things like CDs. CDs have been proposed to be liquid, but really are they? See, if you need 5 to 10% out of your CD, what happens? Well, you got to liquidate it, right? Which could cost you months of interest, could cost you a big fat penalty. But what else do you have to do? Where else can you put your cash alternative that's safe? If you don't go to the market, well, that's where SWAN-Capital specializes in. What happens if I could show you a cash alternative that you could take 10% out every year? And if you didn't take out 10% every year, it rolls over to the next year where you could take 20%, 30%. And guess what? After year 2, if you want to walk away with all your money, no questions asked, no penalties, you can. That cash alternatives is what SWAN-Capital specializes in. And if you have over $150,000 and you have over that in CDs and you're looking for some cash alternatives so that you can put your money off pause, so that you can finally get off your assets, I encourage you to call SWAN-Capital at 850-380-9558. That's 850-380-9558. 9558. In August, we'd be happy to call you Monday to schedule your free consultation, your second opinion on your cash alternative. The next thing I want to talk about is protection. And this really has come to life in my own personal life. Unfortunately, about 2 years ago, I got in a car accident. I was at the Wild Lake and Pine Forest intersection, and I went through the light, and unfortunately, I got in a car accident, and it was at the other person's fault, and I still walked away with injuries. And luckily, I had enough insurance to protect myself and pay for my damages that were done to my neck. But if I didn't have that insurance, being a young man like I am, that I would have to pay for that health care somehow. And if my insurance company wouldn't have picked it up, I would have had to went after the family that was at fault. And guess what? If they had money in checking accounts, money markets, CDs, savings accounts, sitting in cash, or a brokerage account sitting in cash, I'd have went after those investments. And it's not because I'm a bad guy. It's because I had over $100,000 of medical expenses. So you have to take the opposite view and say, wow, I didn't know CDs, money markets, checking accounts were open to lawsuits and creditors. Well, in the state of Florida, they are. And they're easy pickings for attorneys. And it's easy to go after those assets. And you got to be careful. I was just speaking with a family about 3 weeks ago that went through that exact scenario. And if they weren't protected and hadn't spoke to us, they could be in a real big trouble, financial jam. So you don't want to catch yourself in that. And the cash alternative I just shared with you, where you can get a guaranteed 5% up front, guaranteed 2% with an opportunity to make up to 4%, that is actually provides you an extra layer of protection from lawsuits and creditors. So if you have $100,000, over $100,000, let's use an easy example of $200,000, and you invested this into this cash alternative. Not only would you get 5% up front, but you'd get a guaranteed 2%. So day one, you start off not with $200,000, but guaranteed to start off with $210,000, and it would earn a guaranteed 2% on that $210,000 with an opportunity to make up to 4%. So it's a great opportunity to not only have something that has some liquidity features that you don't enjoy in CDs. It's not only to compete with inflation, but it's actually to add that extra layer of protection to make sure that, God forbid, something happened to you, you got in a car accident, someone slipped on your asphalt, that these assets wouldn't be counted in that total and they wouldn't go after that. That would provide some peace of mind. There again, most of my clients are in their 70s and 80s, and they're still driving. And a lot of people make jokes about families that are driving in their 80s and 90s. But my grandfather's 93. He was a fantastic driver. But you got to be careful. We live in a texting generation. If you get in a car accident and it's your fault while you're in your 80s and 90s, your money could be open to lawsuits and creditors. And you can speak to your attorney about this, but they would share with you the exact same thing. And if you can add extra layers of protections with your cash alternatives, how much better can that? That's icing on the cake. So it's something to think about while you have your money invested, or I like to say on pause, in GBS accounts. The next thing I want to share with you is about taxes. What's coming up in just a few days? It's tax time, right? April 15th is fast approaching. And you're like, oh man, I'm glad I have finally had that behind me, right? Well, what if I could share with you a way where you could reduce your taxable income on your interest on your CDs, money markets, and savings to zero? Sound too good to be true? Well, not necessarily, because here's why. With the cash alternatives that we use tax-deferred cash alternatives, which means is if you're making $1,000 in interest this year, that we could take that off your tax return in the following next year. By working with your local CPA, we can work to actually reduce your taxable income in this year and make sure that your interest is efficient, that you're paying taxes more efficiently on your cash alternatives. Because if you're paying taxable income every year on your CDs, your money markets, and savings, you don't pick when you pay your taxes. The bank sends what you made, and you have no choice. You got to pay it to Uncle Sam. But in tax-deferred accounts, we choose when we're ready to pay the taxes. Isn't that a change? So if you want to find out more about these cash alternatives, I encourage you to sign up for our second opinion service that we have for cash alternatives for families that listen to our radio show, What Your Money Would Say. And what it is a 30-minute consultation where we look to make sure that you have ample liquid savings. Again, when's the last time you had a $50,000 emergency? If you have over $150,000 over that amount, we'd be happy to share with you ways that you can have a cash alternative that can earn a guaranteed 5% up front, 2% guaranteed on that amount, with the opportunity to make even more than that, up to 4%. You can call our office at 380-9558. That's 380-9558. We're going to recap the show in just a few minutes and put all these puzzle pieces of why GBS accounts are not a good fit for your cash in just a few seconds.
Today's financial landscape can be rough. One of the most important aspects of planning is choosing the right guide to help you navigate the road to retirement. Andrew McNair and the team at SWAN-Capital is dedicated to providing the very best service in the retirement planning industry today. SWAN-Capital is a full-service independent wealth management firm dedicated to providing guaranteed custom income plans that you cannot outlive. Contact Andrew McNair at SWAN-Capital 850-380-9558. That's 850 850-380-9558. The difference between Swan Capital and you retire once. We help people retire every day. You should be enjoying your retirement years, not letting worry keep you up at night. Swan Capital. Sleep well at night. Contact Andrew McNair at Swan Capital, 850-380-9558. That's 850-380-9558. Again, that's 850-380-9558.
The Veteran Benefit Project, founded by Andrew McNair, president of SWAN-Capital, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping veterans and widows of veterans with long-term care expenses by qualifying for the VA's Aid and Attendance Benefit. Learn how to receive over $24,000 per year from the VA towards long-term health care. There is absolutely no fee associated with our assistance to the veteran, the widow of a veteran, their families, or any retirement community. Our goal is to preserve the dignity of the veteran and to reduce the dependency on the Medicaid system. Again, learn how to receive over $24,000 per year from the VA. Contact the Veteran Benefit Project, 850-380-5137. That's 850-380-5137. 850-380-5137. Look us up on the web, myveteranbenefit.com. At the Veteran Benefit Project, we are committed to helping you secure the benefits you deserve.
Welcome back to What Your Money Would Say. Well, it's been a great show talking about GBS accounts. So if you're invested just like I am in checking accounts, CDs, savings, money markets, and you have your money in those accounts, what we at the office call GBS accounts, going broke safely accounts. You want to make sure you don't have too much money in GBS accounts, right? So that's why I'm going to put it all together to you and share with you why and implore you to look at another alternative, to look at a cash alternative that may be the best thing for your family right now. And let's start off with the first thing we talked about, which is inflation. See, CDs have been positioned to us to be safe. But are they really? If they're default risk safe, but they're not safe from inflation, they are actually silently eroding. And it's sad because many families are doing all the right things. They're trying to chase the next best CD rate of 1.2%, 1.5%. Yet inflation last year was at least 1.5% that we tracked in the CPI. But again, as we talked about, if you're retired, your inflation rate is so much higher than that. So you want to make sure that your cash is comparative to inflation, if not beating inflation. The next thing we're going to talk about is liquidity. We talked about that CDs are not as liquid as they are positioned to be. If you need 5 to 10%, well, you're out of luck. You got to liquidate the entire CD. Well, not with the cash alternative I'm about to wrap up with. The other thing is protection. If your money's in checking accounts, CDs, savings, those monies are easy pickings for attorneys, personal injury attorneys that are trying to help their client get the most out of you to take care of their client's health care bills. So you want to be careful and make sure that if you can add an extra layer of protection, why not? The next thing is taxes. You want to make sure that your cash alternatives are efficient. Because let's face it, we spend so much in taxes. You know, pay to Caesar what is Caesar's, but I don't want to pay too much to Uncle Sam that I don't have to. And when you have taxable accounts, you have to pay it on their clock, on their time period and their timeline. But if you have tax deferred accounts, which is what we use for cash alternatives, you can pay it at your time when you take a distribution, when you want to liquidate your account, which has been a godsend for a lot of families at tax time, which we're fastly approaching. And I guess I'll put a little blurb about get your taxes done if you haven't already done it, right? The next thing is I just want to put it all together. So if you're worried about inflation, you're worried about liquidity, and you're also worried about lawsuit and creditor protection and want to make sure that you're not overpaying in taxes and that you're in control of your taxes, well, this cash alternative is perfect for you. You can get a guaranteed 5% up front, a guaranteed 2% on that amount, an opportunity to make up to 4%. So basically, if you have $200,000 today, you could lock in 5% up front, starting off with $210,000 and a guaranteed 2% on that amount with the opportunity to make up to 4%. Call our office at 850-380-9558. That's 850-380-9558. 888-9558. See you next time on What Your Money Would Say.